Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time you're watching this, good whatever that is. To the guys, gals, non binary pals. It's good to see everyone. And I'm going to add something new to my intro because I'm going to be talking about mental health today. Or at least it's going to be part of what I'm talking about. That if you're going through anything and you feel any which way where a permanent solution seems to be the only option for a temporary issue, I assure you it's not. And the National Suicide Hotline is 988. Please call it. People love you and people need you. So tonight, I'm going to take a break from politics and all that and talk about my experience moving back to Arizona and what brought me back to Arizona and then back to the East Coast. And then I'm going to follow it up with what happened with Boston in a later episode. So we have to rewind quite a little bit to the mid 90s. So get in your DeLorean and whoop. I spent the final semester of the eighth grade and all 4 years of high school in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'd say I had your typical high school experience. It had its ups, it had its downs, it had its whatever. But it was always something I was very nostalgic about. However, once I graduated high school, my family moved to upstate New York. So I didn't have the going home for Thanksgiving, going home for the holidays, because whenever I would go home, I'd be going to upstate New York because I went to college in Boston. So I always had a nostalgia about Arizona. I believe I visited there once in 2004, but I don't really remember a lot about that trip. Uh, for a reason we'll talk about at a later date. But then in May of 2019, I was invited to one of my dear friends from high school's wedding in Arizona. And I thought, you know what? I have the vacation time at work. I've earned it. I had some money in my pocket. Why not? And that vacation ended up being one of the most awesome experiences of my life. About a year before that, I had sort of excommunicated quite a bit of my social group. I left the 12-step program, and I did it quite immaturely, which I can admit now. Now, there's nothing wrong with believing you've outgrown the 12-step program, if that's the case. And I think there's a lot of flaws in the program. And I plan on having a whole show about that, but that's not what this show is about today. So, but the way I handled it was very immaturely. And I have the awareness now to say that. So, I alienated quite a few people, to say the least. So, I was lonely. Then I go to this awesome wedding in Arizona and I organize a get together the night before of just friends of mine from high school, and so many people show up. And I feel this social camaraderie that I hadn't felt in such a long time. And it was special. And it's a feeling that I had been chasing the past 3 years of my life now. The wedding was incredible. Two awesome people, and just like the vacation was perfect. There's nothing negative I can say about it. So then I decided when I got back, I want to move to Arizona. I wanted to chase that feeling again, right? But I wasn't admitted to the Arizona bar. So, took out my computer, filled out the application, which had some red flags, which we'll talk about at a later date. I want to keep this very focused. So, it's supposed to be like a 2 to 3 month procedure to waive in. I knew that wasn't going to be the case with me, but I didn't know exactly what I was in for. So I fill it out and I send it, I remember, on July 4th, 2019. And of course, the red flags that I expected to be raised were raised. No surprises. So I'm going back and forth with them, explaining things in my past, showing my recovery, doing everything I did to get admitted in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and DC. Wasn't my first rodeo. So I expected it would take about like a year or so. What I didn't expect was there to be a worldwide pandemic. So, just as I'm going back and forth with them, enter March 2020, and the country shuts down, especially government offices. And the admissions office in Arizona was not deemed an essential office, so they were unavailable, and they were overworked. And they had to figure out how to administer the bar exam due to the new world we were living in. And I was furloughed from my job only for like 2 weeks, though. And I'm very loyal to my job, so getting admitted in Arizona was in hopes to convince my boss to potentially move out there. But obviously the thought of getting a new job was in the back of my mind, but not the priority, surprisingly. Somewhat of a misconception people have on my professional goals while moving out there. So, another year goes by, and it's 2021. And I am hit with a legal accusation, I'll just say that, based on something that happened in 2014, which put my entire application in Arizona on pause. Because as long as there's an open accusation, you can't be admitted somewhere else. So it was just put on pause. So I had to hire a lawyer, because any lawyer will tell you that a lawyer who represents himself has a moron for a client, and wasn't going to do that. So, hired a lawyer, more money out of my pocket. Eventually, that reached the end that I expected, and they reopened my Arizona application. I had disclosed that I had transferred my recovery from 12-step based to therapy based. And this is something I don't agree with. They believed I needed their permission to do that. And I think that's very unhealthy. And that's something that if I'm ever in a position to make a decision like that, I would be adamantly against. I don't think we should be telling people how to get help as long as they're getting help, but I digress. So I ended up having to hire another lawyer, an Arizona-based lawyer who had experience going in front of the Committee on Character, because I had been trying to get my hearing, and I'm not going to say they were purposefully putting me off, but I'm just sure they were very, very busy. Really, all the blame on this falls on me. So, I'm going to not put it on anyone else. So, I do hire a lawyer, very, very good attorney. And once I sign the retainer, within 5 days I have a hearing date set. Coincidence? Maybe. Evidence? Probably. So I spent hours in preparation with him over Zoom, and we have the hearing over Zoom, and it goes very well. And the committee unanimously decides I have earned the right to be admitted in Arizona. Great. Now keep in mind, I have been hemorrhaging money this whole time on lawyers. Really trying to avoid asking anyone for loans because I'm an adult male. I'm an adult. The man part doesn't matter. So, upon getting this piece of paper that said the committee has decided I should be admitted, I jumped the gun. I'm like, oh, I'll be admitted, matter of time, just the court has to sign off on it, and the court does sign off on it, and all I have to do is send in a check for $500, bada bing, bada boom, I'm in. So what do? Do I send that check for $500? No, I call a moving company, and I start looking for apartments. And a good friend of mine who I went to high school with was the leasing agent at a complex in Arizona. So I decided to move into that one. And throughout this whole time, I wasn't analyzing my finances as well as I should. Is this a move I can afford? Is this a smart idea right now? Will my job let me? So I do go about it the right way in my job. I meet with the HR rep and my manager. I make a formal request. I don't rush an answer, which, if you go back to how I handled making requested work like years and years ago, it's quite a different story. And I never got what I wanted then. But eventually it got approved. Why? Because I believed that I had shown my job that I do have a very strong work ethic. I can be very difficult. I try not to be anymore. But one thing they can't deny is my work ethic and the hours I put in and my loyalty to the company in which I work. So I call a moving company. We agree on a price. And they show up. They pick all the stuff up. And just as everyone warned me they would do, but I didn't listen because my head was in, I'm doing this. They pulled a bait and switch and doubled the price. Well, I need the $500 to send to Arizona. And also I'm going to drive cross country. I need hotel money. So, but whatever, I have credit cards, I'll figure it out. So I'm driving and I reach Indiana. And SOB, I get COVID-19. That should have been a sign. Thankfully, I was vaccinated. And I honestly think, due to my weight and overall lack of physical health, I'd be dead if I wasn't vaccinated. So that delayed the trip 2 days, where I was just hung up on a Motel 6 in Indiana, somewhere. Seeing if Mike Pence could overturn the Super Bowl that the Cardinals lost to the Steelers, because that was when someone was saying that Mike Pence could overturn stuff he couldn't. I digress. So eventually, I feel a little better. get back in my car, finish the ride, having to stop off in like really grungy hotels, which I wasn't used to, I'll just say that. And eventually I arrive, and one of my dearest friends from high school worked for the Hyatt and was able to get me a room at the Hyatt for half off until the movers showed up. And I'm very thankful for her for being able to do that. And the movers kept pushing off when they're going to show up, just like everyone warned me they would. One date became another date, became another date, became another date, but that's okay. I'm in Arizona. I'm driving by and, seeing my high school building that's still there, but it's a building, and I'm not really associated with anybody there. But I can see the building, so nostalgia. Midlife crisis, maybe? I don't know. I move in, and I wasn't living within my means. I was getting paid well, but I was being irresponsible. I didn't factor in anything but rent. Didn't factor in things like electric, gas, water, all the other stuff. Well, just from a lack of responsibility on my part, from immaturity on my part. So I wanted to enter a new stratosphere socially in my life, which I thought I would definitely have the opportunity to do, being that I was working remotely. But that involves having some money to do it. And I'm not a thief. I'm not a liar. Now, you might not have stolen, I have lied, but that's not how I identify myself, and that's not things I do currently, to the best of my ability. Well, I don't steal. Sometimes I may just lie and not even realize it at the time. So I felt somewhat trapped right away. But okay, it'll be all right, because I'm always like, you know what? It's only a day away. But there was another factor I didn't consider. My social group from high school, the people I was close with, my friends who I hadn't talked to for a good 20 years, they had lives now. They hadn't talked to me for 20 years. They weren't moving across country for me to be part of their life. I was moving cross country to be part of their life. They were married. They had children. They may be on their second marriage. And something so obvious is just something that I didn't even hit my mind while I was moving out there. Throughout the entire time, I'm getting so comfortable with my job, I don't send in the $500 until a year passes from the day the committee said, "You're in." So I called them up. I forget exactly what I said, but I needed some paperwork just to fill out, and I'd mail to them and mail them the $500, and all will be well. They're like, "Well, a year's gone by, so you have to fill out a updated application." Huh? Well, that's not good. Because there had been some financial things that had happened. Nothing dishonest, but some, paid for less than full on credit cards. That's it. But I knew it would raise a red flag. But the question was worded, "Are you 90 days late on any debts?" And the answer is no. So I answered no. And because, honest, not stupid. I didn't hear back from them for another 9 months. And in that time, I just suffer from this extreme loneliness. My happiness would be waiting for TV shows, which was never a source of my happiness before, talking to my dad, and we were talking every day at that point. We never talked every day before that. Talking to my sister, not every day, but a lot more often than previously. Talking to my niece and nephews, and talking to friends from the East, because they were the ones I grew up with. Just because I went to high school with people 20 years ago, I can't say I grew up with them anymore, because half my life has been without them. And unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we didn't have a 20-year reunion. Hopefully we have a 30. Hopefully we have a 20-year reunion. And, I would gladly fly out for it. And I'm grateful that I didn't fall back into addiction, because that definitely could have happened. And it's no one's fault but my own. I saw people, but I couldn't see them all the time. It was like I really was starting from ground zero socially. But I didn't have the money to put myself out there socially. Again, my fault. So the goals of rekindling all these relationships, along with growing myself as a social creature in the world, were both failing, and failing miserably. So what did I do? I got new teeth. Band-Aid solution. Although they do look good. They do look good. And I think I had somewhat of a nervous breakdown. And as I discussed in a previous episode, I fell into a strong depression. And it was all because I didn't think things through. I made a decision, and no other logic would enter my brain. No, all the things I just said about, my friends growing up being financially irresponsible. Had someone told me that when I had made my mind up, I wouldn't have listened. In one ear, out the other, or I would have made up some stupid excuse as to why they're wrong. I'm really glad I went out there, though, because I learned about myself. Was it a failure? Absolutely not. Am I against it potentially happening again if the wind blows me in that direction? Absolutely not. But I think my place is the East Coast. But I learned so from the negativity internally. I learned so much about myself. And I learned what's appropriate ways to behave, which you would think when I moved there at age 38, I would already completely know. Nope. And I still don't completely know. I'm always learning. But that depression was bad, really bad. And that could have led me back down the road into active addiction like that. Part of me thinks I stayed clean out of resentment. Who knows? Doesn't matter, I did. You may hear otherwise, not true. So ultimately, I was on the phone with my mom, and she said, you got to come home. And my sister had wanted me to come to the Boston area because she lives there. So I had people who wanted me. as opposed to people who were living their lives and I hadn't been a part of it. Nothing bad about them at all. Once again, nobody in Arizona did anything bad to me to make me come back. It was all me and my irresponsibility. I want to make that very clear. And I'm grateful for all the people I saw when I was out there. Really grateful for them. So please, if you watch this, I do not want you to take this the wrong way, but you had lives. You're entitled to. I was the one who chose to not have a life, and when I got one, pissed them all off. That was my choice. But again, I must repeat, it was not a mistake because I learned. And as long as I learn, it's not for naught. So my sister had wanted me to come to Boston. So ultimately, called a moving company and hit the road to Boston. And if you want to know what happened there, you'll have to tune in tomorrow at Ian Zev's Life. So that is a very abridged version of what brought me to Arizona and what brought me back. Oh, and by the way, I'm still not admitted. Still. They have given me a deadline of December 29th to send them paperwork about some of the financial things. I don't know if I'm going to send it or not. I probably should. I put a lot of money into it, and you never know. Options are a good thing. Either way, thank you, and I love you. In Taylor, we trust.